Murao Neiza, Shalom. Survivors, First Lady, Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have come from Jerusalem to be with you here in Kigali as we commemorate together the 32nd anniversary of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. I don't come as an expert on Rwanda, but I do come as a friend of Rwanda. And I come as a representative of another people whose history has been marked by genocide. The Jewish people, a people whose experience has shaped much of the world's understanding of genocide itself. And obviously, as I come also as chairman of Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. I come first and foremost to stand with you, to remember with you, to walk with you, to stand vigil with you, as I did yesterday. I come from Jerusalem, a city where memory is not only preserved in books and archives, but lives in stone, in language, in daily life. A place where the past is never distant and where the responsibility to remember is part of our very existence. The institution that I have the privilege to lead, Yad Vashem, has for decades maintained close and meaningful ties with Rwanda. These ties are rooted in a shared understanding, born of painful experience of what happens when hatred is allowed to grow, when dehumanization becomes normalized, and when the world fails to act in time, as it failed in 1938, as it failed in 1994. The tragedy of Rwanda was not only what was done, but also what was not done. Genocide does not begin with killing. It begins with ideas, deadly ideas. With words that strip people of their humanity, with narratives that turn neighbors into enemies and differences into danger. What Rwanda has aptly defined as genocide ideology reminds us that mass violence is prepared long before it is executed. And it reminds us also that education, grounded in truth and in historical integrity, is one of the most powerful tools of prevention. The genocide against the Tutsi, carried out by extremist Hutu, remains one of the most devastating crimes in modern history. In the span of 100 days, more than 1 million innocent people were murdered, men, women, and children, often by their neighbors. Families were annihilated, communities were erased, the very fabric of society was torn apart. And yet, the genocide did not end when the killing stopped. Its consequences endured in grief, in silence, in trauma, in memory. They endure still. They will endure for generations. As Jews, we recognize something deeply familiar in that reality. Not because our histories are the same, no, they are not the same, but because the experience of genocidal destruction leaves marks that are profoundly human and painfully enduring. I am reminded that in the summer of 2022, when US President Joe Biden came to Yad Vashem, I told him, Mr. President, if you want to understand Israel as a society and Israelis as individuals, from the President and the Prime Minister to the last Israeli, you should know that the Holocaust is omnipresent in the back of our minds. The same applies to Rwanda. The Holocaust was not only the murder of 6 million Jews. It was the attempt to destroy an entire civilization. There were communities, centuries-old Jewish communities, where life had flourished, prayer, study, music, argument, hope, After the war, many of those places remained physically standing, but the Jews were gone. Not transformed, not rebuilt, gone. I will have the privilege to meet in a few hours His Excellency President Paul Kagame. And I will present him with a book, the catalog of the artifacts in our synagogue in Yad Vashem. All those artifacts are from synagogues in Europe that were remained intact, but with no Jews to pray in them. At Yad Vashem, we try to restore names, faces, fragments of lives, but we know that what is missing is greater than what can be ever recovered. And this absence does not fade with time. It was in the midst of that destruction in 1934 that the Jewish jurist Raphael Lemkin coined the term genocide. Lemkin, who lost most of his own family in the Holocaust, understood that naming such crimes was essential, that only by defining them could humanity begin to confront them, to bring perpetrators to justice. He believed that awareness could lead to prevention. And yet, unfortunately, history has shown how difficult prevention is. In medicine, there is a phenomenon known as phantom pain. When a limb is lost, the body continues to feel its presence. The amputated leg still hurts. So it's with genocide. The loss remains. The pain remains. It becomes part of who a people is. The Jewish people in Israel live with this. Rwanda live with this. For the Jewish people, the existence of the state of Israel is one answer to the vulnerability exposed by genocide, but it does not absolve us from the universal responsibility to others. And from this shared human condition, distinct but deeply resonant, a meaningful dialogue has emerged between us, Israel and Rwanda, Jews and Tutsi. That dialogue has taken shape not only between institutions, but also between people. In 2005, at the initiative of Rwandan genocide survivor Yolande Mukagasana, Yad Vashem hosted an encounter between survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi and Holocaust survivors. I met here in my visit to Kigali some of the participants in that encounter. The purpose was not to compare suffering, not to measure pain, not to measure who suffered more, but to sit together as human beings who had endured the unthinkable. A young Rwandan participant, Jean Bosco Wimana, who had lost his entire family in the genocide against the Tutsi, asked a Holocaust survivor 50 years older than him, Eliezer Sharon, whether he had ever freed himself from the trauma. The answer he received was simple and profound. My friend, you will have to fight against it all the time for the rest of your life. There is truth in that answer. Genocide leaves wounds that do not fully heal. But it also leaves responsibilities. Both our people had to learn not only how to remember, but how to live with memory. In Kinyarwanda, you say Ibuka. In Hebrew, we say Zachor. In Jewish tradition, remembrance is not passive. It's not a right. It's an obligation. Today, Wednesday, is the last day of Passover, the week-long Jewish festival of freedom that recalls the liberation of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. At its heart, at the heart of Passover stands a commandment. Vehigadeta levincha, you shall tell your child. Remembrance must be transmitted from generation to generation so the truth is preserved and values endured. And here in Rwanda, one sees such commitment in the impressive way you commemorate, in the impressive way you educate, in the impressive way you have chosen to rebuild, in the rebuilding of institutions, in the pursuit of unity, and in the conscious rejection of the language of division. Rwanda today offers a powerful example to the world of what a society can strive for when memory is used not to perpetuate division, but to build responsibility and a shared future. This is not self-evident. This is not obvious. It is a choice. It is a choice you made. And I must tell you, it is a remarkable choice you made. In my recent private audience with Pope Leo XIV, barely 2 weeks ago in the Vatican, we spoke about the moral duty of remembrance. The Pope reflected that memory must not remain confined to the past. It must shape conscience and guide human behavior in the present, so that the imperative of never again may be translated into action. That insight of His Holiness the Pope resonates deeply here today, because remembrance also carries a warning. The world did not end genocide with the Holocaust. The world did not end genocide after the genocide against the Tutsis. Hatred, incitement, dehumanization of others still exists. They take different forms, but their essence remains the same. Even in Europe, the continent where the Holocaust took place, anti-Semitism did not disappear after 1945. It mutates, it adapts, but it re-emerges recently with alarming violence, reminding us that hatred, once unleashed, is never entirely gone. More than 80 years ago, in the Warsaw Ghetto, a Jewish educator named Avraham Levin wrote, and I quote, "Despite all the monstrous actions, I still believe in humankind. If humanity understands that the supreme holiness on this earth is that of life, then a new humanity will rise." Levin did not survive. He was murdered by the Nazis. But his words did. They speak not only to Jews, not only about the Holocaust. They speak to Rwanda, they speak to Israel, they speak to Europe, they speak to Africa, and to the entire world. They remind us that remembrance must lead to responsibility. Remembrance must lead to responsibility. Responsibility to defend life, responsibility to confront hatred, responsibility to act before it is too late. Remembering is not enough. Prevention requires vigilance, education, and the moral courage of states and leaders. The moral courage of states and leaders to act before hatred becomes violence. In Jewish tradition, we say, Yehi Zichram Baruch. May their memory be a blessing. I wish to conclude with a sacred word from your tradition, my Rwandan brothers and sisters. Tubibuke. Let us remember them. And let our remembrance be expressed not only in words, but also in the courage to ensure that no people, anywhere, at any time, will ever again stand alone in the face of hatred. Thank you so much.